So we were asked by one of our subscribers and one of our followers over on Instagram if we could do a video on quartering and processing of deer. It's something that we do ourselves, or at least I do. It's something I've done for many years, probably 20 years or so. This is going to be the way I was taught. There may be easier ways to do it. There are 1,000 ways to skin a cat, and there's probably 1,000 ways to skin a deer. And the same goes with the processing part, turning it into burger and steaks and so on and so forth. But this is the way I was taught, and it's, again, become kind of second nature to me in how I like to do things. So we're going to go ahead and do this in a two-part series. The first part is going to be the quartering process and skinning process. Obviously, she's still got her hide on. This is a doe I shot about 3 days ago, I think, and I would probably like to let her hang another 3, maybe even 4 days. However, we've got a nasty weather system rolling through, and she would be a frozen popsicle here in about 24 to 36 hours. So I'm going to go ahead and skin her out tonight, get her quartered up and ready for the butchering, or I guess the processing of the meat. We're going to do that here in a couple weeks, so I'm just going to throw her in a cooler right now, and we're going to get down in the deep freeze so it'll all be frozen. And then in about 10 days, I'll get it back out so it'll thaw, and so we can turn it into burger, steaks, roast, and that sort of thing. So the first thing, of course, want a sharp knife. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to simply, you always want to try to cut from underneath the hide. That'll help keep hair off the meat. But I'm going to simply slice up the inside of the leg. And you can do it on the back of the leg or the front of the leg. That's just the way I do it. And then I'm going to start cutting and pulling away that hide underneath again. And inevitably, you're going to get some hair onto your meat. You know, you'll see a lot of people that will take a propane burner and burn that hair off. I've never really had enough hair on my meat to do that, per se. Always just seem to get it off relatively cleanly. And this knife is super duper sharp. I use one of those Work Sharp Ken Onion version sharpeners to touch this knife up, and it did pretty well. So here I'm just doing the hindquarters right now. This is where I always start. And you can, well, I shouldn't even say always, maybe. On does, sometimes we will hang them from their necks and then cut all the way up. Cut all the way up the brisket and up the neck and start from the neck and go down. But I hung this one upside down here on the gambrel. And that's the way I'm going to do it. So I'm just basically cutting and pulling that hide away from the meat. And this is where I take pretty much just roasts out of. Get roasts out of this quarter or this half and that half of the back leg. And I'll take my roasts out of the back strap, or my steaks out of the back strap. All right, so I've got her pulled around pretty decent there. I'll come over on this side. She's actually pulling off pretty good without having to cut too much, so that's nice. Okay, so I've got that leg pretty well started. Now I'm going to come up here and skin around the entire leg. Probably even, because there's no real meat up here about where the Achilles is. And I'll just cut right around from the inside out. And again, there are probably many ways to do this, a lot quicker ways. A butcher shop is obviously going to do it in a much quicker fashion, but this is the way I do it here at the house. Okay, that leg is free. Go ahead and just pull down. Sometimes, depending on how tough the skin hide is sticking to the meat, you may have to cut a little bit, but She's skinning out pretty nice. Now you got some fat here, and you'll have fat all the way down, depending on how fattened up they are and what time of year it is. She should have a fair amount of fat on her, being this late in the year. Okay, so I've got her pretty much this leg free. I'm going to go ahead and do the other leg in just the exact same fashion. And you want to be careful if you're going to hang them up this way. About the last cut that we'll do is taking the roast out, because you want to be careful about cutting this back tendon, the Achilles heel, if you will. You cut that and the whole thing's likely to come down on you, so just be careful around that for now until it's go time for the roast. All right, now that I've got it back to the tail end of the deer, just going to keep skinning down. It'll get a little tougher here as far as pulling the hide away, because it's kind of stuck to the fat. But then I'm going to pull on that tail, and eventually you'll find a spot. I think I got it right there. If you find that spot right where the tail breaks over, you can find the knuckle, cut in between that knuckle, and the tail will basically come right off. And now it's kind of a matter of just pulling the hide down. Again, there are a lot of videos out there on how to do this, and I'm not saying there's a right or wrong way, because there's a bunch of different ways. This is just the way I do it. Now, as you're working along the rib cage, on a gut shot deer, obviously you're not going to want to save any of this meat, but you can save it if it's not a gut shot deer. This was a double lung hit. No intestinal matter involved. And then right here, this is pretty much all fat right here above the knee. This is going to be fat. We're going to end up trimming that off anyways when we make these into roasts, so might as well get it now. Come over and free this side up a little bit over here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and warm my hands up a little bit and just keep on pulling. You might need to cut a little bit here and there along the way to help you pull down. You just want to kind of follow that hide all the way down. Whew. This is actually the entry, which I was a little surprised I didn't get into the rumen, the guts, if you will. It was a little far back. She was quartering pretty hard, but I missed it. Thank goodness. My thumb is starting to freeze. All right. Okay, I'm actually going to stop right here, and I'm going to pull her up a little bit higher, because I'm going to go ahead and make my next cut down her brisket. And I'll probably go ahead and trim off her front legs while I'm at it. Okay, you can see I've got her down pretty far right to where the brisket begins. Now I'm going to take my knife, and this is the way you would actually do a whitetail buck if you're going to get him mounted. Take my knife on the inside. You can do, I actually will do it from the elbow up and do it kind of in a triangle. So I'll come down here about where the meat stops, go straight up the leg, kind of up the color change here, get to the elbow, and go straight up to the brisket on both sides. So right up to the elbow, up to the armpit. If you're going to get a buck mounted, this is the way to do that too. And then I'm going to turn my knife at an angle and go straight up to the brisket. I'll come over here and do that on this side. Up to the elbow. Of course, you want to be careful about your knife direction, which way you're pulling. And go straight up, well, not straight up, but at an angle to the brisket. All right, now it'll come apart. Her hide will come apart here and here on either side of her legs, and we'll just continue working that hide down. The first time I saw this done, I was absolutely fascinated. I guess anatomy in a way has always kind of intrigued me, anatomy and biology. And to just to see an animal that you're going to consume broken down was just really interesting to me, I guess. I don't know. Exit side there. I'll come over here. There's a thin membrane between the fat. You got the hide, fat, and a thin membrane of muscle there. All right, so I've got her hide down to the armpit on either side. Come in here to the brisket area. Now you do want to, there's quite a bit of meat up in that brisket area, so you just want to kind of slide your knife, if you can, as much as you can, between the hide and that brisket meat. Trying to do as much in the lighting as I can for y'all. Let's see, where's my cut here? Okay, right there. That goes on that side. This goes on this side. So now I'm going to do the inside of this, her front leg here. And transfer over to the inside of her other leg, front leg. Okay, got that as far down as I want for the time being. I'm going to go ahead and finish up pulling down on this side and freeing up this other front leg. Just pulling as you go. Spin her around. Free up this other front shoulder. Okay. Basically all I'm doing now is trying to free up that hide from the front legs where they meet the front of the chest and the neck. In fact, why don't I pull her up a little bit higher, because I don't actually even know what's in screen. Now I can go ahead and cut her, the hide off her leg. All right, so her leg's free. I'll come back with a Sawzall and cut above what's left of the hide there. And I'll come over and do this other side. In the meantime, kind of the trickiest part is up here at the neck, where it meets the front of the shoulders and all that. That can be kind of a pain in a way. And really the entire neck can be a pain, but that's why hanging him from the neck sometimes is a little bit more advantageous, because you can, that neck likes to hold on to the hide quite a bit harder. Again, I'll come back with the Sawzall here momentarily and cut these off. One leg down. Two legs down. All right. Now I'm going to get these front legs out of the way. When I finish up drawing down the neck, I'm going to go ahead and cut them off. And this was probably, when I first learned how to do this, this was probably the thing that I was like, what in the world? They're not connected shoulder to the carcass like a human. They're not connected like that. Let's see if I can get you the best view here. So I'm just going to go along the armpit and take all this meat and pull the leg away from the carcass. Pull that front leg away from the carcass. I'm just going to cut. I'd like to get her a little bit more free down here first. Okay. So I'm just going to cut this front leg, because this is all actually going to just go to burger. I'm going to wait till this, for us anyways, this is all going to burger. Whole front quarter. This is all burger meat. Put it in my cooler. In a garbage bag there. And I'm going to come over and do the other shoulder, which is a little tougher being a right-handed individual. But we'll manage. So you'll basically cut right in there in the armpit, and you can kind of follow the shoulder blade up and around to the, just below what's going to be the back strap. Back straps are right here. So I'm going to follow that shoulder blade up and around right here, and you can see by definition the muscle up here at the front of the shoulder that will come off with the whole thing eventually. Again, being a right-hander trying to do this sometimes on this this particular side can be a challenge. There we go. And boom, the other shoulder right there. All right, now I can finish up taking this neck, and I think what I am going to do is go ahead and just split the hide right down the inside of the neck. Because it'll just come off that neck a little bit easier. And you'll be able to salvage a little bit more meat. If you don't do it that way, sometimes, especially once you get up towards the head area, it's hard to roll that hide and get enough meat out, especially on a rutting buck. Their skin is stretched so tight around that neck that it's kind of hard to get that hide rolled all the way down. So I'm just taking a knife and letting gravity help me out here a little bit as I pull just a little bit and roll that hide down along the neck. Our neck meat goes to burger. I know people that will actually make neck roast out of the neck meat of a deer. It's not something that I've ever tried, frankly. I think my buddy Brett out in New Jersey does that with his neck roast or neck meat. Now, it's amazing. She's got a pretty skinny neck. It's amazing the difference in neck size and the amount of meat on a rutting whitetail buck versus a late season buck, for that matter, or a doe any time of the year. So I've got her pretty much down to her bottom jaw, the start of it there, pretty close. Just gonna come in here and start working on taking her head apart, or off. I'm not taking her head apart, I guess. And I've never been able to find the right spot to cut where it just comes clean off. So I'm going to grab the Sawzall again. That's pretty close, actually. All right. So now we're left with just the meat. No hide, a little bit of fat. That'll all get trimmed off during the actual processing thing, or processing portion of butchering this doe. And we're going to go ahead and start with the back straps on the back of the carcass, right through here. That's the next step. All right, I'm back, and so is the feeling in my thumb. I had to take a little break there to thaw my thumb out a little bit. But now we're going to move on to the back straps, where we get our steaks out of. We've got the front shoulders off. Obviously, the hide is off. Front shoulders. Got everything that we're going to use exposed here. So for the back straps, I'm going to find the hip. It's kind of right in this general area, right where the rump ends. And I'm just going to make a cut right through there. And then I'm going to cut down on this side of the spine. I'm just going to go all the way down along that spine. And then you can actually go ahead and cut all the way out here. You find that hip bone, it's right there. I was a little high. And then you can roll that back and just kind of slice with your knife along the ribs. This is where I use a little bit longer knife. You could use a shorter one if you so chose to do. And I'm basically just going to peel that away. Eventually it'll basically peel right out here once I get it loosened up. Just a little bit. cut right along that spine, and you'll see the top of the ribs here. Go ahead and cut that off too. It's a little bit more frozen than I thought, but it's going to come out just fine. If it wasn't so frozen, you could really just yank right through that, and it'll all come out in one big meaty piece. But I do also have the arrow entrance right there to work around a little bit. There we go. Now we're getting somewhere. Once you get loose of this bit of fat, it'll plop right out. You can just, like I said, usually pull it all out in one big piece, and this is coming out pretty well for as frozen as it is. But right there, that is a back strap, and that is what your steaks will come from. Butterfly steaks. I will also sometimes just cut them whole and leave a 6-inch piece, wrap that in bacon, throw it on the grill for a little bit. That's tough to beat. But we'll clean this up. We'll get the silver skin off of it when we're processing it and packaging it up. But that is a gorgeous piece of meat right there. One other thing that I do, I put my front shoulders in one side because they're going to be burger meat, and then in the other bin I'll put my specialty meats. I'll put my back straps, my roast that'll come off the back hams, and that sort of thing. But burger meat basically goes in one sack, and my specialty cuts will go in the other one. So now we got to do the other back strap here. I guess maybe if I turn around this way, it'll be a little bit easier. Again, gonna come in here just below that hip bone. Cut to the spine, and then ride that spine all the way down. This is another place where being a right-hander, it's a little bit tougher. But then if I was a left-hander, the other side would be a little bit tougher. I'm just cutting right along the top of those ribs, separating the meat from those ribs. Here's your big piece of fat. It's not going to work right there. Big piece of fat. If you pull that off, you pull that away from that. Comes right out. Another fine looking back strap right there. All right, from this point, essentially it's going to be all burger up to here. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of hack away at all this meat here. Try to get as much off this carcass as we can within reason. I mean, you could really sit here and pick at it for days and days and days and not get it all, but we'll get a good majority of meat. Now, this was a bow shot deer. Of course, my hoses were frozen, and I would have probably taken a little bit more effort to get some of this bloodshot meat out. You can save it if you'd like. That part right there is not too bad, but once we get up underneath here, some of that I probably won't be able to save. It's personal preference, I guess. Bloodshot meat does have a different taste to it. Some say it's really unpleasant. I don't necessarily care for it myself, but in fact, why don't I pull this cooler a little bit closer as I'm cutting my burger meat off. That would be a smart idea, Josh. That would be a smart idea. Okay, see bloodshot shoulder here on the exit side. So I'm just gonna start back over here and cut all this neck meat off. Okay, and I'm gonna come up here and take all this fatty tissue off because there's not a lot of rib meat. I mean, we're not talking about a cow or a pig here, but there is some meat in those ribs that's worth saving. And when I'm doing that, I'm just gonna come up in here, cut down one side of the rib. Must have missed that a little bit. There we go. Cut down the top of the rib, bottom of the rib. Now, there's a fair amount of fat in that, but I like a little fat in my deer meat. In fact, when we actually process this deer and turn it into burger, we will add some beef trimmings. For the simple fact, yes, deer meat is lean and is good for you, but it can be awfully dry, and when you're trying to make a hamburger out of it on the grill, dry meat, it doesn't want to stick together. So your burger will just crumble inside your bun. So by adding a little bit of beef fat, it'll stick together, it'll cook a little bit easier. And yeah, it'll cook a little bit more like beef, not quite. You know, some people add pork to their deer meat. We've done that in the past. Just choose to do beef because beef lasts a little bit long in the freezer. Beef trimmings, a lot of times we'll use 90-10 or 80-20, sometimes 70-30. This year, beef is crazy expensive, so in the past we've done a 50-50 mix of deer to beef, but I think this year we may be doing a 40 to 60, 40% beef trimmings to 60% deer, which isn't going to hurt the taste. It isn't going to hurt the consistency. You're still going to have a little bit of beef fat in there, but beef is expensive. What isn't expensive right now, right? Okay, come to the other side. So you want to try to get rid of some of this, you'd call it tallow. It's kind of a fatty tissue, and it'll stick to the roof of your mouth. So I do try to get rid of some of that. You'll have some, again, up here. You know, this will come off when we do our roast anyhow, but that stuff will stick to the roof of your mouth when you're eating it, so might as well take it off while you can. A bit of flank meat here. Okay. Got a little bit more. I'll get that here when I get the. This is pretty bloodshot right through here. So I'm going to just try to trim that bloodshot stuff off a little bit. And a hawk or a coyote or some other animal will have a nice little meal out of that there. All right, so at this point, I've got the ribs cleaned. We've got pretty much all the meat that we can salvage off of the front 2/3 of this deer. So now I'm going to move along and go to the roast or the back quarters, and then we'll be done. So if I can lower her so I can get to these. And this is, again, where you kind of need to be careful about cutting that back tendon. But essentially, I'm going to do the front part of them first. I'm going to go ahead and trim some of this off right now that I know will be trimmed off anyways when we go to processing and actually packaging the deer. And then I'm going to come and I'm going to find that knee joint, which is right about here. I'm going to enter just above it. I'm going to follow that leg bone all the way down to the hip. You can see the leg bone is right there. Follow it all the way down, then you'll find that, then you'll be able to stop, you'll have to stop. You'll hit bone. Just kind of turn your knife out, follow that bone around, and boom, that comes off. That'll be one roast right there. We'll trim it up, takes the silver skin off and some of this tallow fat, and that'll make one nice roast. So that'll go in the specialty bag. Then I'll come over and do the other one. Find that knee joint, it's right about there. Find that knee joint right there. Hit that leg bone, and you can actually see, if you look on the outside, there's a little white streak right here. That's the separation of these two muscles. And essentially when you're following the leg bone, that's what you're following there too. So come down here, open this up. Boom, another roast. Now, before I get to these back hams, well, I'm gonna go ahead and do the back hams now. You can come up here and get this off first, but I'm going to do the back hams, again, being careful not to cut this tendon just yet. But I'm going to cut kind of where it bends, where the leg would actually bend. Right here's the knee joint. Right here on the back side, kind of the back side of the knee is where I'm going to make my cut. You can see she's already starting to flex a little bit here. And I'm going to do just pretty much the same as I did on the top side. And I'm going to come down and find that bone. And I'm going to ride that bone down till I feel the hip joint. Turn my knife. Got a little bit hanging on there, right there. And this will actually make two roasts. We'll come in here and we'll separate a couple of the muscle groups. We'll show that to you in the processing and packaging video, but we'll clean this up again. And that'll make two nice roasts there. Okay. So now, before I go ahead and do the other side, I'm going to go ahead and trim off the rest of this leg meat. It'll pretty much just be going to burger, which of course can be made into jerky or sauce, summer sausage or snack sticks, if you're a snack stick kind of person. More leg meat there. We'll come around here to this rump. Just trimming, being careful to watch your knife and your fingies, your digits, your appendages. But trim some of this meat off that we can get to, because there's a pretty good chunk of meat back through here. We had a big melt off yesterday, and we were supposed to get, they were calling for 18 to 22 inches of snow, which is crazy. And I think we're only going to get like 6 to 10 now, so, which is still plenty of snow. And really, you just kind of, when you're cleaning this up like this, just kind of feel, and if you feel bone, okay, you can't cut there. But if there's no bone, you can get some fair amount of meat off of that. One thing I've never run into, but that you hear of a lot of times, is that, especially on bucks, is a bullet or another broadhead. I've never run into that myself. Now, I've seen one instance where, still not even sure where the broadhead was, but a friend of mine killed a buck. I was helping him. In fact, I think it was his first buck ever, and it was a big buck. Helping him dress it, or I guess clean the meat off. I guess it was field dressing. And we hear tink, 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 tink on the stone in his driveway. And here it was an old broadhead that was stuck in that deer somewhere. We never found out where it was because we couldn't find any entrance or exit on the actual hide. But that deer had been hit. Okay, so we're pretty much down to bone right through here. And about all the meat that we're going to get off this particular part of this doe. Maybe get a little bit more here, right through there. Now I'm going to come back and do this other back ham. Again, being careful, turn it around this way, being careful to cut on the back side of the knee and not get that tendon yet. Still don't want to cut that just yet. And then ride that leg bone down till you hit the hip. Turn the knife, go up and around, and bam. Now clean this hind end, this hind leg up. And that's pretty much it. I'm going to go ahead and grab these, the front of the very bottom of the back leg first, before I cut those tendons. I'll go ahead and cut this back one. I'll slide that knife up because I don't necessarily need the tendon. And down she goes. Just like I said. Fortunately, the other leg didn't hit the ground, so I can still cut the meat off of that. But that's going to be it. I hope you all got something out of this. Even if you know how to do this and have done it before, this is the way I do it. Maybe you got something out of it, maybe you didn't. But for that individual that was in Texas that requested to see this video, that's how we do it. Next video, again, will be the actual processing part where we'll turn all of this good organic protein into edibles. We will grind a burger and trim up our steaks and our roasts and package them all up and put them in the freezer to eat over the course of the next year. So that's going to do it for this video. We'll see you next time right here on The Will Hunt Life.